Creativity and Innovation Day, and because of that, I have invited one of the most creative and innovative people I know, Kim Polson, right here, and she has brought with her a big pile of Lego. Now, it's on the table, safely off the floor, away from bare feet. I understand that you use this in business situations?
Absolutely. It's one of the greatest ways to solve the world's problems.
I am really curious about that. So, how do you use this Lego?
Well, Lego Serious Play is a proven methodology for problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
And it was developed by the Lego company back in the 2000s when they were struggling with some innovation of their own. They were struggling with business challenges, how to recreate themselves to stay relevant. And I think they've done a pretty good job because you can still buy Lego today and it's pretty pricey.
But there was a time when Lego was in definite jeopardy.
Right. So what they did was they decided to use their own product to develop a methodology to solve their own problems.
Mm-hmm.
So within the company, they developed this problem-solving process that works through building challenges, and the unique thing is that everybody builds.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone around the table, everybody builds.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody shares their story. So it levels the playing field. So even though you may be the CEO of the company and I am the custodian, my model is just as valid as yours,
Mm-hmm.
and I get the same opportunity to share my model. And guess what? Some of the best ideas come from individuals who don't get to raise their voice in a regular meeting where you have 20% of the people monopolizing the conversation all the time. So this is a methodology that gives everyone an opportunity to speak. Everybody's model is valid, and it also gives them the opportunity to utilize parts of their brain they don't utilize in your normal workday.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you're kids, you touch a lot of things. You do a lot of things that are three-dimensional. Even when you're in school, your projects may be hands-on, dioramas, those types of things. I don't know when the last time I got to do that at work was, except this work.
My entire house is basically diorama-free, and it's a travesty.
It is. It is entirely, because when you use something like this, it taps into a part of your brain that you don't get when you're thinking two-dimensionally, when you're working on a whiteboard, when you've got a flip chart, when you've got a PowerPoint presentation. Some people, that's not going to trigger for them.
No, those things keep me out of a regular office place.
Absolutely, because it's not a way in which to get the most innovative, creative people engaged and thinking. And you know, if you ever had, got in trouble for fidgeting at your desk or, guess what? That is not a sign of disrespect to you.
Mm-hmm.
That is entirely probably the way that person needs to trigger their brain to engage. And by doing that, they're actually more engaged than somebody sitting next to them potentially could be. So we've got to keep that in mind, that everybody is learning differently.
I used to be a high school teacher, and one of the things that you learn is that, some kids, they need to get up and move around, and that's how they learn best, is while they're moving. This seems like it has some of the same theory.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, because when you're in 3 dimensions and you're using your hands, there is something to be said about a hand-brain connection. When you are using your hands in a way to problem solve, it's triggering both sides of your brain. Instead of just either that analytical side, it's triggering that creative side that doesn't always get triggered in a work environment. Sometimes they do their best to make sure it doesn't get triggered in a work environment. So you want to make sure that when Lego Serious Play is that you're prepared for some really innovative ideas and being open to it, because everybody's model is not only their own to share, but it's valid.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is we use it as a process to then discuss those opportunities, identify those areas for innovation. Oftentimes we find that people may have similar ideas, and we build upon models. So you go from building something yourself, your own model, and then you look at everybody else's and you figure out, let's take the best of all of these, put them all together. Let's start making connections with connector pieces, and how do these things work together, and are those connections rigid, or are they flexible. How do things impact one another? Again, you start moving your model around and it falls apart. Guess what? It's a good indicator that that connection isn't going to be sturdy enough. We need to look at how do we reinforce those connections between different parts of the company, different parts of an organization, different parts of, if you're a global company. You've looked at individuals that Harvard Business School uses this, Nikon uses this, looking at Google who has used this, and businesses who find that, guess what, this is cutting edge because it takes all of the potential in each employee and utilizes it to its maximum. If you're really truly going to implement the methodology, is at least a 2 to 3 hour session. There are times when you will start, for example, in facilitator training, we basically go through what you would run a company through, and it is a 5-day affair.
Oh, yeah.
So you're not just building a model and saying, I'm done. You build on it every single day, and every single day you add a new challenge to it, and you see how it impacts the model and how you need to adjust. So it's really an iterative process. And it's really a shared process where you start as an individual, but by the end, you've built this enormous, innovative model that is shared by everybody and everybody's invested in.
And so it's not only just about building a thing, it's also about learning teamwork skills and negotiation and relating to other people.
Absolutely. It's one of the best team building activities that I think you will find. And a lot of times I get people who say, well, we need a team building activity. And I say, great, you're going to get that no matter what. What's your challenge? They're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, what challenges are you facing right now in your workplace? Are you having difficulty communicating with one another? Are you having, one department that is understaffed, and how's that impacting everyone? So it's great to want to do team building, but as long as we're doing it, let's solve a problem while we're at it. So figure out what a problem is, and then we build the challenges to solve that problem.
And hopefully learn the processes to take those back into your workplace.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And one of the best things to do is always take a picture of your model. It's a reminder for everybody. Post it. It's like, that's what we're working towards. Everybody bought into that. It's a good reminder to do that, because one of the saddest things is when you have people build a model and then at the end of the workshop you say, okay, take it apart. And I tell you, people oftentimes are in tears because they are so invested into that model by that time.
So would you mind leading me through just a sample of what I might experience in one of your workshops?
This is one of the most basic beginning exercises that we have people do, so I'm sure you can handle it.
Okay.
So I've given you a set of bricks.
Yes.
And those bricks are very simple in shape, size, color, nothing too intense. So what I would like for you to do is build a tower out of those bricks. And the only rules there are is that this needs to be your base plate. Okay. And you need to top it with your pink flower.
Okay.
So I'll give you a moment.
Okay, so I built my tower.
Yes.
It is lopsided.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about your process, your thought process when you were putting it together?
Sure. Basically, I wanted to try to build from larger pieces up to smaller pieces, and then I ran into trouble with that little with that sixer there. Yeah, and then I thought maybe a little decorative, since I have that little sloop-de-doo there. I thought maybe I'd do a little decorative note there on top. So.
Wow. Okay. What we know now is we know you can build.
Yeah.
So I get into workshops sometimes and people go, I don't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this.
Oh, really?
So we start simple. We start with this, and everybody's got the same bricks, and nobody's like, they got better bricks than I do. No, everybody starts. So guess what? If you can do this, one, we know you can build. Two, we move on to the fact that when you're doing Lego Serious Play, you aren't doing what you typically do with Legos. Because usually you get this instruction manual, you get all the little pictures that tell you exactly what parts go where, and it ends up hopefully looking like what's on the box. We don't do that here. What we do is we take pieces and we build models to represent intangible things. We take pieces that allow you then to tell a story. So to create metaphor based on what you built. So the next step for me would be to ask you is, use your model to tell me a story about how you approach your work life.
Okay, yeah, I see. So what I would do is I identify my materials. I then organize in my brain what I'm going to do, and then I execute it. And if I run into problems along the way, I just roll with it.
Okay, do any of these specific bricks represent anything to you in your work life in terms of color, size, purpose?
I really like this little flower here on top because it's that's the showy bit, that's the decoration, that's the thing that's on top. So
okay, all right, very good. So now we know you can use metaphor, tell a story about how that represents your work life. And that can be a different question. It doesn't have to be tell me a story about your work life. It can be tell me a story about your organization based on this. Tell me about your team based on this. And so it gives them an opportunity to think about, okay, wait, all right, well, I'm this brick because they somehow have an affinity to that. It represents them in some way. But they talk about how they fit together, what works, what doesn't work, maybe what was frustrating.
So building this doesn't necessarily tell you some deep, dark secret about my psyche, but in questioning me about it, I might be able to reveal some things about how I feel things are going.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what we even notice is during that process, if you're done building first, you start watching other people and how they're building, and you're like, oh, did I do it right? Wait. And then you start maybe second guessing yourself, or you start maybe, I like what they did, and you start building. So you learn a lot about each other's work styles just from this tiny, simple little brick exercise. Because you're like, okay, I know so-and-so is going to be the last person done because I know that's how they work. And that gives them an opportunity to share. Yeah, I'm very methodical when I do this. This is why I built it this way. And you're like, okay, I better understand now the why behind that person maybe not getting things done as quickly as I would. So you begin to learn a lot. And as you get the builds to be more complicated, more intricate, as you start to share builds, you learn even more about each other and how to work together. And so it even helps you gauge a little bit about, okay, I know now that when I send a work assignment to this person, I'm going to include bullet points. I'm going to include numbers, make sure that they know exactly, because I now know that is how they function. That's how their brain works. So it automatically helps you begin to communicate a little bit better in your work environment.
So the fact that I just put this together while I was having a conversation with you, and I was decisive and didn't second guess myself, that tells you something about the way I work.
It does. Yes. I mean, it tells me that you're used to being in a position where you may be doing multiple things at a time, that you aren't second guessing yourself, that you feel pretty confident, you go with your gut. So it gives you a lot of information that you can work with. And again, it's not a deep, dark secret, but it may help reveal what people already know to some extent, but it helps them better understand it.
So I can reveal my work style in a low stakes way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So does this work even if you have like a dysfunctional team?
But most teams are dysfunctional to some extent, because guess what? We all are. That's the human interaction. That's what happens within families. That's what happens within businesses. But part of that is not changing it. Part of it is understanding it so it becomes functional. And this is part of what this strategy can help you do, is tap into everybody's specific areas in which they have a level of expertise. Maybe you learn that this person is so deliberate and methodical, they are doing the wrong job. This, I think, is something that is not limited to the workplace, and it's not limited to somebody who's a certified facilitator. You've got Lego bricks at home with your kids. Sit down and give them a building challenge that is different than what they're normally doing. If they're normally building that model and it sits on the shelf for a long time, have loose bricks that aren't attached to a model, and give them the opportunity to build something different, not something that is prescribed based on an instruction manual. One time I used this methodology to help my family of 8 decide what we wanted to do for vacation. That's a challenge. That was a building challenge. But from everybody's models, we built a shared model, and we got some consensus as to the type of location, the type of things we wanted to do. Did we need to be near water? All of these things. What kind of food did we want to eat? And we got to that place where everybody was bought into and excited about that vacation.
If you can get consensus from a family of 8, you're a superhero.
I agree entirely.
Kim, how can people get in touch with you so they can have you come and lead them through a workshop?
Absolutely. I have a website. It's polsonconsultinggroup.com. So if you Google that, it would take you to the website. You can reach out to me from there. It'll also give you a lot of insight into the methodology, show you examples of workshops and models that people have made. And it's crazy because you look at those pictures, you're like, what the heck was that? But when you hear the story, or you read the narrative next to the picture, it's like, I see it.
The only way we keep the show going is with your help. Advertise with Northeast Kansas at Home, or if you're just a person, get a membership. $24 helps us for 6 whole months.